the Product Boss podcast. And Designer Consulting Co-op is a full-service design and development company. We've been in business for about 10 years, and we've launched over 500 startup brands, as well as helped people that are already in business. So we are based in Los Angeles and New York. And then the Product Boss and the Product Boss podcast, that's something where we work with product entrepreneurs. So it's not only fashion focused, but it's also on multi-streams of income and sales. So Mina, the lady with the blue phone, she's my partner and co-host, and she's an Amazon expert. So we are actually here today if you have any questions about that, and thank you for joining us.
I have some.
Okay, perfect.
And next but not least is Bruce, who is in charge of the sourcing area here, and give them a little bit of background. You've been in the industry many years like I have and got great experience that you can share.
Hi, I'm Bruce Antrobius. I work for the Magic Show, the sourcing part of the show, and I work right here at the booth to try to guide people and help them. In my career, I was a buyer. I did private label, so I've had a lot of experience. She said I've been around too long, but it's a wonderful field to be in. I think when it gets in your blood, you can't get it out. But we're here to help you and navigate the show. This is a show that it's for beginners as well as people who have been experienced in the show. We have a lot to offer here, and so I'll be over there for any questions after this.
Okay, so let's get started. How many of you just beginning this journey? You've just got a product and you're sourcing. Okay, we have 2, 3, 4. Are you already in production for your whatever you're doing? You've got just getting started. Okay. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about what you need to be thinking about when you get started. First of all, the key to success in sourcing is knowing what you want. So you come here and you're not quite sure. As you know, it's massive. So you need some kind of a list of what it is you're looking for. Are you looking for wovens? Are you looking for fabrics? Are you looking for production? Are you looking for printing? These things you need to know. Are you familiar with the industry? What do you not know? And it's certainly a changing industry all the time. Any of you, if you've just arrived, make sure you go and visit the US Pavilion and see what's going on there with this rapid manufacturing, robots being used, single layer cutting, body scanning, mass customization, 3D printing. I mean, what it goes on, it's just, it really is changing the whole industry, and it's the future. And actually we've got our speaker who's going to be speaking later on all the new technologies that's happening within the textile world. So, okay, so first of all, Bruce, they come to you and they ask you questions. What is your best advice for them when they're starting on this journey?
Well, it all depends on how, if you're a startup company, I try to give them as much information as I can. First of all, I recommend, and I'm not here to sell books, but I recommend her book, which is called Fashion for Profit. For anybody who's starting a business, it tells you how to open up a business and run it from soup to nuts, so that you don't make a $10,000 mistake or a $5 mistake. And I've had quite a few people come back to me and say thank you, and now I know what I'm doing, or I feel like I know what I'm doing. My feeling is that you should come here and talk to as many people, do as much as you can, take in everything, so that you, when you're ready to make your final decision about doing production, you feel confident in doing it. But just because you're doing something right now doesn't mean a year from now that you might change it to go another way. Nothing is written in cement here in this company. I talk about the different things that are available here, like what Trish is doing about sources. She has a lot to offer you in their books and everything. And everything is for made in America, small quantities, which a lot of startup people are doing. I recommend to most people that are startups to start their production in the USA, so they can keep better track of what they're doing. But then I know some people that get out here and talk to some of these people from China and Vietnam, and all of a sudden they found a factory that's going to do 40, 50, 100 pieces for them, and they're very happy. So it's really getting out there and talking to a lot of people and getting it, all the information you can. Something that we offer down here at the end is our color and design area. Your colors and designs for the next 2 to 3 years. It's all free, and you can decide on the colors you want to go into and everything. But I always let the people who are startup companies know that be cautious of all these fashion colors. You need to have your basic colors and what people are really buying. Because I've had it many a times when I was a buyer, I'd have the fashion colors come in and they bombed and they'd be on the markdown rack. Whereas sometimes I've had the fashion colors, and if I hadn't had the fashion colors, I wouldn't have had a great season. I wouldn't have had a really good spring season. So you have to look at everything, watch everything very, very carefully, take advantage of everything that's in here. One of the hottest things that's happening for me at this show is your active weekend wear, expected active yoga. That's big time right now. A lot of people are going into that. We have Taiwan does a display down here of fabrics that aren't even in the market yet. They are experimental, some of them, and some of them are ready to go out, but they're not out there yet. So for anybody who's doing active weekend wear, we have a lot of exciting things. We have a truck over there, a big green truck that recycles everything from water bottles, and that's how they make their clothing. And it's very interesting to go and talk to them about that if you're into eco-friendly and recycling. There's just so much here at this show, but as I say to people, and I don't mean to be, it's just my phrase, I say to people, don't trust anybody, not even your mother. In other words, dot all your I's, cross all your T's.
Can I ditto that one?
And yes, and it's just making you cautious. Check, recheck everything. Don't take anything for granted, even though you think, oh, they do a great job. Yeah. Check it, recheck it, and just make sure all the time. So it's an exciting show. This young lady here is a great service to use. I send a lot of people, I have sent some to her as well, because they don't want to do all the work involved. She can take you from the design to the idea all the way through to production. And a lot of people like that. I have people that have been in business for 40 years and they're still using somebody like her because they don't want any of that in the middle, and they're very happy with it. And she can lead you to not only domestic resources as well as overseas resources. So there's different ways to go. You have to make that decision. And like I said, after you make that decision, you can change it. You have to stay in that way. You might feel, I'm ready to do it myself, or I'm ready to do it another way. And so get as much information as you can, talk to everybody, make relationships with people. If you find a good factory, continue to give it to them, but don't put all your eggs in one basket. You need to have some backup, so try to have at least 2, 3, 4 factories if you can, because sometimes something might happen to that one factory that you love so much, and you better be ready so that you can put your production into another factory. So there's a lot that goes into it. So that's my spiel. If you need any help, come on over here. I'll pass you on to the show lady.
I was just going to say, I always have a plan A and a plan B and potentially a plan C.
When you look at what you come here to sourcing, and Bruce is explaining how massive it is and what we're seeing within the industry, speed to market, how can that relate if you're having it made in a faraway country? So can you speed to market, get your goods back here within 30 days if needs be? Or are you going to be looking for free trade countries? Knowing which countries you want to do business with. So maybe you want to go to Mexico, maybe you want to go to Guatemala or Peru or Colombia for production that can be delivered much more speedily. The other thing is that they are also free trade countries, so that makes a difference when you're doing your cost sheets. So having an idea of where you want to be and what you want to achieve is the key to why you're here. So when you're wandering around, and we have this with many of our other trade shows, it's important that you know what kind of questions to ask, seem professional, and remember, this could be your next business partner. When you're meeting these people, they obviously want to do the best for you because they want you to return and buy from in the future. Will they do small orders? Can they scale up? Is that possible? Can they scale down? So having a good plan of an understanding of what you need to ask when you are here is key. Because otherwise you're spinning your wheels, you won't know what you get, you'll never know what you get, you probably will get what you don't want. So Jacqueline, when you're at these trade shows and you're going around, are you using a tech pack?
That's a good question. So really quickly, if you are interested in questions to ask at a textile or sourcing show, if you sign up with Mina afterwards, we will email you today questions to ask, because something that's so important is that you're asking the right questions and that they will take you seriously. So if you walk up and you're just like, oh, I want this, and they're like, well, what's your MOQ? And you don't know what an MOQ is, sort of thing. So we just really want you, part of my job as a consultant is to make sure that you sound or are educated. I'm educating, teaching, and then helping you minimize the learning curve. So with a tech pack, we do help with tech packs at Designer Consulting Co-op, and what that is I call it the Bible of your garment. A lot of you may not even have your designs made yet. You might have an idea, and you might be out here sourcing and seeing what's possible. You know, if you want to make bags, is there someone here that can do bags? There's a towel company behind us. So you might just have that idea and you're sourcing that. I agree with everybody here that domestic made, and that was sort of my expertise, is domestic made, you have more control over it. It's not cheaper, and it's not always faster, but if you establish relationships with these companies, they can turn things out for you quickly if needed. So a tech pack really is the explanation of the garment, so an understanding of the material that's coming in, the specifications of it, the sew instructions. So really what I tell my clients initially is once you've come up with the concept, you then need, I call it a design tech pack. So it's the very first part of it that you hand over to your pattern maker and sample sewer, because they are not mind readers at all. So if you give them this jacket and you say, I want this jacket made, they don't know if your price point is $700 or if your price point is $42. And so the construction of the garment is very much involved in the end price point. So if your pattern maker doesn't know your end, are you competing with Stella McCartney or are you competing with Forever 21? They're just going to make the jacket. And so it's the difference between lining and if you're using overlock or French seams. So that's the important part initially. So while you're here sourcing, find connections, ask the right questions, but then what we would want you to do is basically then come back to them later, you'll share your tech pack, and then you would go through the development process. So it's not something that necessarily today that you would do, because there's a whole lot of development that goes into what you're making.
Bringing a sample is another idea. If you have already produced a prototype, that way you can discuss costing. And as Jacqueline just said, the most important thing is knowing your market. So everything that you do, whether it's buying the fabrics, choosing the styles, is knowing your market, your price points. That means how much is it going to cost finally, even if you're starting out. Who is your target market? Knowing your demographics. So who is going to buy your shirt for, I don't know, what are you thinking of selling it? Where would you sell it for? So if you're thinking about selling it for $50, could you have made it for, and it depends if you're selling direct or you're selling through a retailer. So if you're selling through a retailer at $50, then you're looking at being able to make this for somewhere around $12. So you've constantly got to be thinking your costing. That rules everything you do. So also production methods.
Well, that's the hard part. So we have, I would say if you're doing a higher priced item, domestic is perfect because you have room there. I have clients that come to me and say they want to do a $50 t-shirt line, and it's not, the capabilities, unless you have the units, unless you're making thousands of pieces, you're not going to be able to make it domestically for a cheap price point, which is why a lot of the lines that we know and love that are American made are higher price points. The value, we don't necessarily care, about where it's made as long as it's in the price range that you're looking for. So I would say, yeah, absolutely being aware of your customer avatar, who they are, and do they care? A lot of times people will say they want to do an eco-friendly line, but when Walmart is doing eco-friendly, and then you have, a $150 t-shirt or a Walmart, organic cotton tee, if they're a Walmart shopper, they're gonna buy their organic cotton there, not caring about the other things involved in that. So it's going to, really it comes down to your price point, the units you're making, and so if you have a higher priced garment, you could make less units and have a smaller margin initially, versus if you really want a cheap product, then you might have to go, I feel like you might have to go abroad. You may buy into more units, but then you're paying less per garment.
And for those of you who are looking for production, maybe Trish, you can explain what your services offer with About Sources and the DG Expo that is coming up in Miami, New York. Where else?
We have Miami, Dallas. Miami's next month. We have Dallas at the end of April, and then New York again in July, and then Chicago in August. So let me go back to the sourcing guide that we have. So you can, this is for sale here, but you are more than welcome to come over and browse through it. But as I stated earlier, it's all North American sourcing. So we have everything from fabrics and trims to sewers of apparel and non-apparel items. If you're doing home goods, all of the companies have an office either in the United States or Canada. So basically, you know, going back to what everyone's touched on, knowing what you're looking for. I think that's the key thing. When you go out, when you have an idea, you create a design, you're starting to source the goods, know your textiles. At least get, you know, as much of an education on your textiles and what you're working with as you can, because there's different fabric weights, there's different threads that you want to use with certain types of fabrics. A lot of new people that don't do their research on this ahead of time will go in and they'll start purchasing the goods and going into production, realizing that you're going through the sample making process over and over again because it's not working. So educating yourself ahead of time is going to save you a lot of money and a lot of mistakes and a lot of time. So what we can help you with over here is you know, helping you to find, if you're looking for domestic production, we can help. You can come and look through the book, you can purchase the book, we have it discounted for the show. And then the DG Expo she mentioned is also a low minimum sourcing fabric and trim show that we do. So I can talk to you about that. But domestic, yes. So we are, you know, we're really focused on the low minimum, so that we're very startup friendly. You know, and when I was with Francis, worked with startups for many years and saw a lot of the mistakes and a lot of these things. You know, you want to help by using other people's mistakes, helping to educate you on what not to do. It's so important because there are so many things that can go wrong if you're not prepared in the beginning. So like Jacqueline stated, the tech pack is going to give every detail of your garment. You know, the production facility, like she said, can't read minds. So what is, you know, the pocket placement, the type of thread, the type of stitch, the weight of the fabric. This is all key to getting your product made properly.
So
Also, something I want to say in the beginning, when you're developing a line, keep it mean and clean. In fact, don't be all over the place. If you know you're going into dresses, do about 15 dresses. Don't do 50. If you're going to be in sportswear, do 2 or 3 bottoms, 2 or 3 tops, maybe a couple of jackets. Keep it very, very tight. Because if you don't, you're going to have a lot of headaches. So I suggest always to keep it mean and clean, to keep it simple in the beginning until you get the experience, then branch out after you get the experience. So keep it very tight. Anybody doing a collection in the beginning, I say it should be on one piece of paper, 8 by 10, period. Unless you've got all kinds of money and you've got all kinds of big plans, fine. But in most cases, keep it very tight, and you will be much better off.
That's really good advice because I've had people come to me in the past saying, "Oh, I'm going to start a line. Well, what are you doing?" "I'm going to do women's, but I'm also going to do children's and handbags and this and that." And it's like, whoa, slow down. You know, start small and do one thing well, and then you grow, and then you expand your line from there. But you can't be everything to everyone when you're getting started.
Bruce mentioning 15 pieces is ideally when clients come to me and they ask me how many pieces should I start with, I say 10 to 15 if you're doing collections, so activewear, swimwear, all that. Listen, your first line is going to bomb. I'm just going to tell you all of that right now. And the reason I say that is it's not going to be your biggest sales. It's a snowball. So your very, very first line is what you're getting out there. You're going to these trade shows, they're taking a look. Maybe you'll start to pick up a few stores. Generally, Nordstrom's is not going to buy your first collection. They want to know that you have proof, that you're doing well, that you're starting to sell to people, that you can produce. And if they order it and they want a delivery of, you know, May 15th, you're going to ship it on time and it gets to them. They're not going to waste $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 on a line that they have no proof that you can produce and ship on time, and that customers are going to want to buy it, and that it's quality. So I'm not saying that in the meanest way, but just know that if you start small, you have an ability to work out kinks. So even if you work with experts like us, there are kinks to be worked out. You might be changing your design ideas as you're going through it. You might work with a fabric vendor and realize that that fabric vendor was great for one of my other clients, but somehow doesn't work well for you. And so it is something that you really don't want to blow all of your money on that very, very first collection, because it's your learning. You're going to learn from this. So yeah, 15 pieces, I would say. And item driven. So if you think about any line that's done really well, it's item driven. They've sold one thing really, really well, and that sort of funded their business. So I always go back to the Juicy Couture tracksuits, like those velour tracksuits that everybody was wearing. Well, Juicy was around forever before that. Like I have denim from '97 from Juicy. Did you know that they had a denim line before their tracksuit? No, because their tracksuit is what got them bought up for billions or
Ralph
millions.
Lauren started with just ties,
Right.
so it's always that key piece.
Also, when you're doing a line, I'll kind of try to teach you how a buyer thinks, okay? If you have an item on your line that just blew out of your store, you sold it out completely, you did phenomenal with it, you should immediately turn around and be refabricating it, tweaking it, come out with the same item, only in new colors, maybe add colors, because when a buyer gets something in and they know that they've sold that, the first thing they're going to buy from you, they're going to sit down and write 100 pieces, because they know they're going to sell that. So you have to watch what you're selling, what you're doing. When you see that something's not doing well, get it off your line. Put on the stuff that's doing well, and you have to constantly watch it. Now, one thing I want to bring up that is at this show right now, I'm not trying to sell anybody or anything, they've been having these websites in Europe as well as in China, where a young designer and a new designer can go on this website and present their line. Maybe not the whole line, it could be items or whatever. There's a company we have exhibiting here called Fashion Go. This is one of those companies. A friend of mine 2 weeks ago put 7 styles of blouses there. She made 100 of each. She ended up selling 4,000 units. She panicked. Not a maid, she's doing wonderful. But this is kind of the wave of the future, these websites. You can have your own website, but this type of website reaches millions and millions of people, not only in this country, but around the world. And it's the wave of the future, it's what's happening. Until you get your line up and so that they recognize your label and everything like that. But this is a very good way to go to start doing business. So I would like for you to go down there and talk to Fashion Go, because you'll get some really good ideas. They can help you in the process. So there's just so much to learn right now. And also, when you're going into these booths and talking to people, you might walk into a booth and you're going to say, "Oh, get me out of here! I don't want to work with these people." You know, you just have that feeling. You know, they just don't seem reputable, and you don't like the way they're acting, or whatever. However it happens. The next booth you go into, you might say, "Oh my God, they've got everything I want. Oh, I'm so excited." Don't jump. Take the name, take the card. Don't leave anything with anybody. Get all the information, because tomorrow you might find somebody who's even better. So, you know, keep it calm about it and everything else, and see everything, talk to everyone, get as much information as you can, and then go back and make some, I want to go back and see these 3 or 4 people and start working with maybe 1 or 2 of them. So this is just advice from an old man, okay? And, this is all here at the show for you, but get as much information. And the other thing I didn't mention, and I'm sorry, it's very important, and Francis actually does our seminars. We have some incredible seminars upstairs, about 30 of them. These are people in the business, from Levi's, all name brands. You can ask questions at the end of it. You might meet other people that are doing what you're doing, and talk with them and become friends. Really, you're interacting with other people. You never know who might you talk to and where you can get information. But those seminars are terrific because you can learn from them, ask questions. Francis has one. I know this young lady has done seminars as well. Just take advantage of everything, because the fashion business is changing drastically. It's not like it used to be. It used to take, if they said, "Oh, it's changing," it took 10 years to change. Now, it takes a month, 6 months. It's changing. Everything, technology, computers. I mean, there's so much more involved now. in the fashion world. And you've got to learn all these things and decide which way you want to go and how you want to handle it. So that's it.
It's a very complicated business, and this is why we're here, and this is we realize that it's just not about inventing a widget. You're out there and you're designing something, and once you've designed it, you're working on the next one, you're doing production, you're getting the fabrics and you're checking your fabric, you're doing your costing. There's a lot going on. So getting an education, knowing what you're asking for is key. We had, as we know, we've had members of our organization who have spent, one wonderful woman, she was a banker, she wanted to do suits for professional women, and she spent $54,000 on samples. When she showed them to me, none of them were usable. I mean, it was a real disaster. So, you know, why is that? Because she didn't know the difference between having a busted notch collar and having it sandwiched between. You know, you just don't have that. So you've got to be working with people that really know the business and make sure that you check their credentials, check what they've been working with, what kind of samples they've been making, what they've been doing in production. These are your partners. And that's why you've got to do your due diligence, interview them, find out, have they got the qualifications? Do they have the machinery? Do they have the ability to make the products that you want to have made? So.
Right. One thing I wanted to touch on too when we were talking about domestic versus overseas, yeah, a lot of times you can get, if you can get someone to work with you in China doing low minimums, you have to make sure that they truly understand, you know, there's the communication thing, and this is another thing I've seen happen is, you know, a lot of times they'll say, well, yeah, they said yes, they can do this. Well, you know, yes doesn't always mean yes when you're dealing with language barriers or dealing with someone overseas. You have less control over your production. So it is so much easier, I think, when you're getting started to start domestic. You have more control. It's a quicker trip to go and check on the factory and see what's going on versus hopping on a plane to China or Bangladesh or somewhere. And one other quick thing I want to touch on is making sure you know who you're working with and that the factories you're dealing with are legitimate, are certified. So there's different certifications. There's WRAP, which is an organization. It stands for Worldwide Responsible Accredited Production. If the factory is WRAP certified, you're in good hands because you know that they're compliant, you know they're not using child labor, you know that all the standards are met. Also, if they're certified by a large company like Nike, you know that they're okay. But making sure you know who you're working with, you don't fall into a situation where your line is being produced and, you know, if you look at what happened a few years ago in Bangladesh, where there was a fire in a factory, another factory collapsed and hundreds of people were killed. You know, you don't want your brand, first of all, it's a tragedy to begin with, but you know, you don't want to be part of that tragedy. You don't want to be, you know, the line that was being produced in that factory or the factory that's using child labor. So making sure that you know who you're working with is so important. Do your due diligence.
The other thing also is, too, there are tons and tons of companies from China, Vietnam, Japan, all of these countries that have offices in New York and Los Angeles. You don't have to work with overseas and worry about the translation and all that and getting things mixed up. They have representatives here. I suggest to anybody who is starting out to use anybody that has an office here because they speak English, they understand it, they're responsible for the samples to be correct and everything. And I do recommend anybody who's starting out to do that, to work with the offices that are in Los Angeles. And I found out that more and more of these people are often opening up offices in the USA and Los Angeles. So that's another way that you can go as well.
That's so important. So I've had the company 10 years and I've been an expert in domestic manufacturing. And my clients are the ones that started pushing out into overseas manufacturing. So I have somebody in Peru, China, South America. And so what they did though, is that they were at places like this, they found companies and they asked, do you have an office here? Who is my key match person here? So for example, we have Ari in LA and she's our person for my one client and she's the one dealing with China, dealing with specs. She understands their working language and their turnaround times. She also, it's Lunar New Year. Everyone, I mean, like everything is shut down right now for things that you actually need. And so she knew about that and how to push them. So it's not to say don't go overseas, but finding your person. I've been my client's person, and then now it's consulting them with their people. And and then we all work as a team together, because ultimately it takes a village to raise kids, it takes a village to, launch and grow a clothing line. So I think that's an excellent point from Bruce, that don't count all of this out, but make sure you have your people that get you and get the language. So yeah.
Has anybody got any questions for us?
How does, if you're starting a new line, our situation is we have 14 stores in Hawaii. We've been in business for 30 years, but we're retailers, and now we're looking at getting into manufacturing a little bit. So if we were to hire somebody as you, Jacqueline, how do you structure your fees? Or how do you, is everything contractual individually?
That's a great question. So he's a retailer on the islands in Hawaii, and they're thinking about launching their own line. So one of the things that I am offering today are free 20-minute consultation sessions. So Mina has a sign-in sheet, and I'd love to talk more detail with you about that, and that would be consulting and development about your brand. You can also sign up, there's a separate list, Mina, for getting on the questions to ask at a textile show, which we can immediately email you. But we've had many clients in Hawaii, and there's an issue with travel. You guys are, there's the time difference basically, and then also just shipping over the ocean, and there's not an industry there. So there's an industry in LA, even Dallas has an industry because there's Neiman Marcus there. So if you're not in the hub, how do you have someone sort of being the person who looks out for you? So great question. I think that would be better addressed in a separate conversation.
What's the name of the stores in Hawaii? Sand People. Oh, right.
Also, just to let you know, retailers, I think, sometimes have an edge over somebody who's starting a line, because what happens is you have all of these different merchandise coming in from all of these different lines. You might get something in that you sell out in a weekend or in a week. That's a sign that you should take that particular item and get it made for you with your label. Tweak it a little bit, you do new prints, do whatever. It might have, but you can be ahead of the game because you feel like, that style sold out. I had 400 of those. I don't have any. You could probably go in and make a couple of thousand maybe and feel confident in it if it's made correctly and everything. So a lot of times retailers are doing private label, which I used to do many years ago. We used to go to the couture department and we'd buy 25 outfits because they sold these out at $2,000 tops and $4,000 dresses. We'd send it to Hong Kong, and then for the next season, I got that dress back. It was $38. Okay, I sold 10,000 of them. So retailers, in some cases, have an edge over anybody who's doing a brand new line, and you can do a lot. I mean, you could actually probably build a line around your hot styles. So that's a good way to do it. Retailers have an edge, I think, sometimes.
Any other questions?
So you guys talk a lot about domestic production, and maybe I just missed the show purpose here, but from the exhibitors here, I don't see a lot of domestic production opportunities to discuss. And is that where a DG expert? Did I just come to the wrong show if I wanted domestic? Because it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of energy on domestic production at this show.
At this particular show. I mean, there is a U.S. section, but you're right, it's not nearly as big as China and all the others, but that's where the guide, the sourcer's guide we have about sources, if you do need help in that area, if that's what you're interested in, that's what we have, are listings of production facilities just in North America. So if you want to come see me afterwards, I can help you out with that.
Also, just to let you know, even though I have the show here, I'm like a person that if you can't find it at Macy's, I'll send you to Gimbel's. In other words, I'll give you more information. There's websites you can go to, such as Makers Row, Manufacture New York, her website. She has a website, okay? There's lots of other websites out there to find domestic things. You can go into LA and go to Kotra, and they have a listing of all of the Korean factories there in Los Angeles and other places. So there's other ways to find out. We try to get a lot of those people to come here, but you'd be surprised, they just don't want to put their name out there. They don't want anybody to know about it. Unfortunately, they have workers that shouldn't be working there. And sometimes what happens, the government closes them down, and 2 weeks later, they open up in another block under a different name. That's part of the reason, not always, but that's a good part of it. And but there's lots of ways to find other domestic resources.
And I'm going to say you're not at the wrong show. So I have clients here that I'm actually looking for because they're ready to grow. So if you're doing handbags, belts, there's a lot of items that are really hard to make domestically, like probably impossible. So handbags are very difficult. It's the industry left and it hasn't really returned. So I would say it's almost shopping or pre-shopping for what you eventually might grow into, or if you're going to launch into other categories, you might be able to do, there's socks behind us, so you might be able to do socks with them, but then still keep your brand going. The US side, there's people that we've worked with, there's people that have been in the industry. I think it's just a good learning show, and then we're so fortunate to have you at our seminar because Frances has been in the industry for such a long time. I mean, when I started my business, I bought Fashion for Profit, her book, and I recommend it to all of my clients. And so these are the connections, like us in the panel, and then Christine will be talking later. These are the connections of people that you've got this one-on-one with us, and then we'll connect you with the people that you should be with.
And if you buy my business starter package, I also give you 20 minutes free. So.
And honestly, it answers so many questions. I would have people coming, joining the FBI who are new and saying, well, I want to make an appointment for an hour consultation, but I'm just so overwhelmed, I don't know what to ask. And I'd say, get this book, read it. It's gonna, it prepares you because it really is the A to Z guide, and it's an easy read. It's not daunting. It's all laid out for you very simply. From concept all the way through production, all these little things you don't think about when you're wearing a million hats and you're starting a line. The licenses you need. Do you have your garment manufacturing license? That's another thing we didn't talk about. But if you're producing in California or New York or New Jersey, you have to make sure you have a garment manufacturing license. And a lot of people are not aware of this because they say, well, I'm not manufacturing, I'm having this guy manufacture it. Well, you are the manufacturer if it's your label in there. So they're a contractor, they need a contractor's license, but you as the designer, as the one selling the goods, your labels in the goods, you have to make sure that you have a garment manufacturing license. So, these are all things that if you're not aware of, and a lot of people aren't, they could make a very costly mistake and have their goods confiscated. So just making sure that you have all your ducks in a row, and that's one of the things I always tell people, and I've had so many people come back to me saying they swear by that book. So, it'll answer, so it's a very inexpensive way to answer a lot of questions.
I've got a lot of payout here.
I don't get commission either. I really do believe in it.
But I was going to say the best way to utilize this panel right here is that Frances has been in the business. She taught at the school I actually graduated from. She has a book. She's published.
Otis College of Art and Design.
She's part of this part of sourcing. So if you're starting a company from the business and the greater perspective of starting this business, Frances is the way to go. You want to buy her book, the starter package, because I always tell people I'm not a business consultant. I am a fashion designer by trade. I've helped develop and manufacture brands, startup brands, but I would be on the creative side, and we're both creative. We're both.
I'm a designer gone insane.
Yes, we're both, and I'm on the edge of being insane. So we have the same background, but I would go to her for just the world of knowledge of the business and the industry. And then for me, it's the little like, okay, my pattern maker is really pissing me off, what do I do now? Sort of thing. And then Trish is the sourcing, which any you could work with Frances or I on the sourcing guide and basically say, okay, I'm dealing with these 3 people, these are their minimums, this is the price point, and we could definitely help navigate and help you, figure out who's best for you.
The other thing that I wanted to say was, and I'm not trying to take anything away from this young lady because she is very good at what she does. I have a listing of agents. We have agents down in the USA area, and I have about 15 other agents that I can give you that you can talk to that can conceptualize right through to production. You have to pay for it. You have to pay a flat fee or a percentage. Sometimes you have to negotiate all that. That's what you have to do. So there is a lot here, and we're all willing to help you. The best thing is to see somebody come in and write 50 of a style and then come back next year and write 5,000. And we've had it happen. So like she said, sometimes that first line isn't good, and sometimes that first line is very good. And it like thrust you into a whole different kind of business, and you have to be ready for that and make the right decisions. And so if you have to pay for a consultant, pay for it. I think they're needed badly.
It'll save you a lot of money down the line. It's like your knowledge.
As long as you get the right one.
Yeah, exactly. This gentleman had a question.
Yeah, quick question. So I guess this is dealing with more on the business end. we're a small startup athletic brand, and we were wondering what are some of the, before we start dealing with sourcing, what are some of the immediate steps to, protecting the brand and the intellectual property?
It's in my book actually, and we did a whole seminar yesterday on IP protection, so I can help you afterwards, but I think we've got to close up now because we've got another one starting in a few minutes, so I'm happy to talk to you on my desk over there. Anybody else and have any other questions for anyone?
Which one, Francis?
If you get
Or
it,
the source.
oh, the other one.
The Sorcerer's Guide is it's 100 at the show. It's normally 120.